Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we're going to try to get to a few questions, and we'll kick it off with this one from Hawking Jim, who asked, "Hey Thor, excellent video. You got me thinking. You're such a wealth of knowledge on Jedi, Sith, and all that, while James Mangold, don't get me wrong, he's a great filmmaker, might not be much of a lore expert. So how worried are you about the Dawn of the Jedi movie? Do you think it could end up changing the lore in ways that might be troubling?" And yeah, I'm actually very worried about this one, and not just because of his recent comments where he said he didn't want to be handcuffed by all the lore, which I found kind of ironic because you are now going to handcuff, kind of in a way, everybody else going forward. If you are the one who sets the foundation of the Jedi, if you are the one who is giving the origin story for them, everyone else kind of has to fall in line with that. To a degree, anyway. Obviously, we're going back 25,000 years, and what the first Jedi thought may have been refined along the way. I don't think they would have gotten everything correct right out of the box, if you will. And I've theorized before, one idea here could be we're going to set what the Jedi were 25,000 years ago. It's going to be very different from what Lucas said of them. And then we have a Rey movie 25,000 years later where she is reading from the first Jedi texts, and that is the new Jedi Order. That is what they have made them. You can kind of circumvent everything Lucas by saying, well, here's the origin story, and here is Rey learning from the books from the first Jedi, so this is the Jedi now. So yeah, I am pretty worried about what might happen in this movie. Furthermore, I don't know that it's a story we necessarily even need in the first place. Do we need to know how the Jedi came into being? Does everything need a backstory? And can you tell a satisfying backstory for the Jedi Order in 2 hours and 20 minutes? Or is this going to try to turn into a trilogy, or what? And when we got the Dawn of the Jedi story in the EU, I wasn't necessarily a fan of it. But either way, it's one of those things that I just don't think we necessarily need. And again, he is going to go back and he's going to be the one who sets their history. Now, everything has to come from that, in a manner of speaking again. And so the guy who doesn't want to be handcuffed by lore, ironically, is handcuffing everybody else by the lore. So yeah, I'm rather worried about this one. Alright, next question comes to us from Veterlit Torf, who asked, "Hey Thor, I've been wondering about how a millennium of peace made the Jedi complacent and arrogant. The question is, what could they have done to prevent that from happening? It's often said that peace can lead to stagnation and that controlled chaos is needed to stay in shape, so to speak. But it would be absurd for the Jedi to allow evil into the galaxy just to keep themselves focused. So what exactly could they have done to maintain the humility and vigilance that they had when they were at war with the Brotherhood of Darkness?" And quite honestly, I don't know that there was anything they could have done. I think there's only so long you can stand on guard before you lose a bit of focus. I think there's only so much practice you can do for the big game before it becomes kind of redundant, before you just have to play the game and see how you fare. Also, I think we have to give some credit to Palpatine and the Sith for playing the long game, whether by design or by default. I tend to think more it is by default than something that the Sith were plotting for 1,000 years. I know that some will disagree, but I think every Sith thought they were going to be the one who was going to defeat the Jedi and rule the galaxy, and they weren't. And their apprentice learned a little more, gained a little more, and finally Palpatine was the culmination of, again, something that kind of came about by default rather than being a long-term plan by the Sith. Either way, I just don't think the Jedi could have been prepared for the plan Palpatine had. I think their downfall isn't so much that they were corrupted or anything like that, which is kind of what the Acolyte begins to imply. I think it's that they didn't see the Sith, they didn't see signs of the dark side for 1,000 years, and they became more proactive instead of more reactive. They became sheriffs of the Old West, which is kind of what the High Republic era portrays them as, or says they are, even if it doesn't necessarily portray them that way. And I do think that is a good idea. I think one of the best ideas the High Republic had is that it does show the Jedi kind of going out there and trying to tame the Wild West, putting up a giant beacon that would be the light in the galaxy. I think that all made a lot of sense, and I think they became kind of full of themselves. They became a bit arrogant, as Yoda says, and they simply were not ready for just how strong the dark side was when it reemerged. Though even saying that, again, I don't think it was just entirely the Jedi failing. I don't think that is what Lucas was trying to show in the prequels. I think he was trying to show that you have to always remain vigilant. Even if it doesn't seem you need to, you always have to be ready. You always have to be on guard for evil. But it's hard to be, maybe impossible to be, when you don't see it for so long, and then it suddenly shows up and it is as clever as Palpatine was, and as well planned as their takeover was. They fell right into the Sith's trap, is what happened. They became entwined with the Republic, so what happened? The Sith took over the Republic, got them into a war, and put them in checkmate, essentially, with Order 66. Alright, let's move on to this question now from Paradox, who asked, Hey Thorpe, how bad do you think Dooku actually was? If we had a scale from someone like Qui-Gon, who wanted to follow the will of the Force, to the dick Jedi from the Clone Wars, who treated the clones as fully disposable, I think you mean Pong Krell, to Palpatine being arguably the most evil, unless maybe we get into Nihilus or someone from the EU, where do you think he'd be? Was he actually worse than the Jedi scumbag? And bonus, where do you think Asajj Ventress would be? I know that might be a bit tricky since she evolved a bit. And I think Dooku, like a lot of Sith probably, and like Anakin essentially, starts out very well intended and quickly falls and succumbs to the dark side. There was another question kind of goes along with this one from Sean Murphy, and he asked, why would you take a dark sider at their word? Once you fall to the dark side, you do not control the dark side, it controls you. You might, and this is a big might, think you are striving for something you want, but in reality you are merely doing the work of the dark side, or the will of the dark side. And I agree, and I think that is exactly what happened to Dooku. I think he thought he was doing good. I think he set out with good intentions, and then suddenly he's learning from Palpatine, he's being corrupted by the dark side, and a good guy who was once a great Jedi is going along with the idea of starting a war which will see millions, if not billions, across the galaxy suffer and die. And so it's hard to say that he is a good guy anymore at that point. It kind of reminds me of what Gandalf says to Frodo in Lord of the Rings about the ring, that he would take the ring in an effort to do good, but through him it would do terrible evil. Same with Galadriel, essentially. You can't control the dark side. That's what a lot of people don't understand, especially those who think you can be a gray Jedi or something. You don't control the dark side. It will always end up controlling you. And so I think Dooku is absolutely someone who started out with good intentions, and even when he is full-on dark side, even when he has been corrupted by it and is a Sith and is Palpatine's apprentice and all of that, he's fighting in the Clone Wars, he's seeing millions and billions dying, I think he still believes what he is doing is right, and that he is going about it the only way he can. He just doesn't realize again how fully corrupted he has been by the dark side. As for where I put him on the scale, unfortunately, the dark side, I don't think there is much of a scale. I think there is dark side, and once you're in there, you're in there. You may not be as bad as some are. You may not be, as I said the other day in a video, as sadistic as some might imagine you would be. You're not going out of your way to kill and harm others, but you are so consumed by it, you are so consumed by fear, that you're doing things you normally wouldn't do for a cause you may fully believe in, and you're just not seeing all the harm you're causing along the way. You're not seeing how afraid you are, and how the dark side is kind of fully controlling your actions. Alright, one more question, and it comes to us from Fat Man, who asked, Hey Thor, does Star Wars lore state that the dark side is somewhat vampiric in nature? It seems that the truly powerful in the dark side become paled and deformed the longer they are corrupted by the dark side. I love watching your videos, more power to you and Naboo. And yeah, George Lucas himself has described it as cancerous before, that it consumes who you are, and that is, rather vampiric in nature, I would say. And I think that is part of the reason why sometimes they do kind of become deformed and paled and all of that as well. I think that might be just kind of a visual representation of what is happening to you on the inside. There are those who even believe that when Palpatine took the lightning to the face in Revenge of the Sith, that it was just melting his mask and not his actual face anymore, so to speak. And so yeah, in a lot of different ways, going along with what I was saying before about how you kind of lose yourself to the dark side, it is vampiric in nature. It does suck the goodness from you. It changes who you are, and I do think there can be a visual manifestation of that as well. But anyway, yeah, I would say it is vampiric or parasitic in nature. It is the opposite of the symbiotic relationship that George Lucas talks about. Problem is, again, you don't realize how far you have fallen, how corrupted and consumed by it you are, until it is much too late. Well, that's going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell me what you think about anything and everything I had to say here about the Jedi or the dark side. Or, of course, you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. You just start your comment off with, Hey Thor, ask your question. I try to answer it in a future video. But whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.